Welcome back to Razmafzar TV. Hi, Bede, how are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Today we are going, thanks a lot. Today we are going to talk about a Samurai Museum, which is a museum in Berlin, Germany. A very unique museum which only shows Japanese arms and armor, only. And this was a collection, now a museum, and exceptional quality of Nihonto blades, of pole arms, bows, armor, and so on and so on. Pete, have you ever seen a museum which only has Japanese arms and armor? I've never seen. It's always different arms and armor.
Yeah, generally speaking, I mean, in Australia, the Australian Museum has quite a large collection of Japanese arms and armor.
But I mean,
Some
next
of
to
it,
other types of armor.
yeah, that's it. It's a general museum which also has large amounts of archaeological stuff and large amounts of uh, plants and animals and things like that. So it's a generalized museum, and it does have a fair amount of Japanese stuff. And sometimes they lend it to the Art Gallery of New South Wales, so it gets displayed beautifully. But no, not a dedicated museum. I'm sure if I am lucky enough to go to Japan, I'll be
Yeah,
able to
that's
find
different.
something like that.
Yeah, of
But
course.
outside of Japan, I
Yes.
think it must be pretty special.
Yes, I mean, of course, I need to qualify my statement outside of Japan. Of course, they have lots of
Mm,
museums, Nihonto museums
mm.
in Japan. They definitely do.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm going to share this and then let me see where it is. Okay, it should be here. Where did I put it? Yeah, it is here. Oh,
Ah,
okay, beat. So this is just the starting page of some of these items, and we are going through them one by one. Let's look at the first one, a full Japanese armor and a bow and a horse.
and a horse who looks very interested.
Yes.
Well, it's got its ears up, its eyes are wide open. Um, I remember this, and there are a couple of really amazing things on this armor and the bow,
Yeah.
which are probably quite important to point out. Let's not talk about the good things first. Let's talk about the things that are inaccurate. The shoulder guards or sode are on backwards, and
Yeah.
you can tell they're on backwards because they have two little metal bars with little ties coming off them that should be on the back.
Yes.
And that set of tassels over his chest also should be on the back because those little ties hold the shoulder guards back out of the way.
Yes.
I think that's in a form called an agamaki bow.
Yeah.
So that's unusual. The bow is strung backwards, which I would assume they wanted to show a strung bow, but the bow is really old and they didn't want
Yeah.
to string it. I'm not saying the curators didn't understand that. This might be just a compromise made so they can actually show a strung bow. But that bow is definitely strung the wrong way around.
Yes.
Um, but I mean, it's a genuine old bow. There's no doubt about that. Uh, the the shoes, starting at the bottom,
Mhm.
uh, are traditionally made from bearskin with the fur on.
Mhm.
And this was a archaic type of footwear worn with armor in, like from the high end period in the 8th, 9th, 10th century into the first shogunate
Mhm.
um, under the Minamoto family. Gradually, it disappeared because the Japanese really didn't like wearing shoes. They preferred sandals and various. Actually, they woven sandals made out of rice straw, and it was so common to do this
Yeah.
that they used to measure journeys in how many pairs of sandals you wore out on the journey. That's a distance measurement in 5 pairs of sandals. So that's good. The shin guards are also quite archaic. They're sumiati.
Yeah.
Um, that's my bad pronunciation. Japanese viewers, please forgive me. Um, these are made of plates with hinges that wrap around the calves, and you can see these ones have little wings projecting to protect the side of the knee.
Yes.
And
Integrated,
this
correct, Pete?
Yeah, yeah. So that's all part of the shin guard. So, like in a Western armor, there would be a separate part covering the knee, and a wing would be attached to that. But
Yeah.
in the Japanese style, they didn't do it that way. This armor doesn't have haidate, which are armored skirt. These often exist for armors, but as far as anyone can tell, they weren't worn very often. The Japanese contemporary descriptions of people wearing armor very rarely mention haidate. They were probably developed mainly for horsemen, and a lot of fighting was done on foot, so that was a problem. You'll notice the skirt of armor. This is made from small scales. A
Yeah.
scale in Japanese is sane, and a small scale is called kozane, which just means small scale.
Yeah.
So these are all laced together, and they're laced in hanging pieces, and the skirt of these hanging pieces is called a kusuzuri, and it is attached to the bottom of the breastplate by long laces, so that you can put a sash around your waist, and that covers those laces. Then above that is the do, which is the in European terms the cuirass. Um, you can see two little pieces here. One looks plain and one looks made of scales.
Yeah.
I think these are Yossa, something like that. They cover the toggles that the armor is done up with,
Yeah.
and they stop it from being cut so the armor won't fall. The one on the left side, which is the left side of the warrior, is smooth metal. So the bowstring, because they draw all the way back here, so the bowstring doesn't catch on little scales as it goes past.
Yes.
Um, then the neck guard, depending on how it's made, if it's a separate piece, it's probably called nodalwa,
Mhm.
and it basically ties behind the back of the head. Then covering the face is a metal face covering
Yeah.
called mempo,
Mempo, yeah.
and this is hammered out of steel into the shape of a face. Usually, the nose section is detachable.
Yeah.
It has a little hole under the chin, um, to allow sweat to run out, because it's lacquered on the inside, so it won't rust on the inside. Because
Okay.
obviously, if you're fighting, and Japan can get quite humid, you
Yeah.
sweat a lot, and this is just a thing to stop you from feeling really awful.
Yeah.
The helmet or kabuto, um, this is a very elaborately decorated helmet. The neck guard is called the shikoro. The turn up of the neck guard, I think, is fukugaeshi.
Mhm.
So the rows of the neck guard come round and then are folded back,
Yes.
which allows your bowstring not to catch on your helmet neck guard. But also, I think it's quite protective if a sword blade's coming in from the above and to the side. Um, I think the big brass decorations are called maidate. Um, these are thin brass. Sometimes they're finely lacquered wood that looks like metal. They weigh virtually nothing, but they're like European heraldry, that they're to help other people on your side to recognize where the commanders are and the leaders are, and on the other side to impress them by how brave these people are, because they're quite prepared to go into battle with a big sign saying, "Here I am, attack me." And I mean, the Japanese had a very strict approach um, to recognizing intent in wounding in battle. So if you're in battle and you get shot by an ordinary arrow and you're an important person, like whoever would have worn this armor, if it's an ordinary arrow, they say you've been hit by a stray arrow. But if it's a special arrow, like with a beautiful point and everything like that, and special feathers, then you've been shot deliberately. And therefore, it's an important thing. And I love this thing about this kind of levels and levels and levels of importance and privilege that people took. And you know, that people were quite prepared to take extreme risks. Now, the photograph which shows the right arm shows an armor for the arm called kote.
Yeah.
Kote are attached often to the shoulder, the straps that the shoulders come up under. They have little toggles and they kind of button in there. And often down the inside, they're open and a lace zigzags up and down to pull them in tight around the arm. And so that padded arm guard then has sewn onto it a maille and plate um, defense. Now you can see this one has both maille and plates, and the plates are lacquered and gilded.
Yeah.
And you can see the hand covering as well. Um, this
Just
is
some words about the Japanese mail. Normally, Japanese mail is not riveted. Can you just say something about that bead? Because it was.
uh, Jap- yeah. Japanese mail is very distinct from Western mail. They did make when they were exposed to Western mail, they made functional copies of it that worked just as well as Western mail. But Western mail is a series of rings interlocked with the next row with the next row, but all the rings are basically the same shape. In Japanese mail, there are lots of different ways of linking the rings together. And instead of using rivets, they use high carbon steel links that they harden.
Yeah.
So the link, sometimes it goes around twice,
Yes.
like a key ring,
Yes.
and they might have solid circular rings with four elongated rings attaching to the next row of circular rings,
Yes.
or they may have six. The pattern can be hexagonal or octagonal as well. The varieties of maille in Japanese armor are really noticeable. Sometimes it goes to the extent where, somewhat like plate and maille, where there are little solid pieces with these links in them. So, as I say, the wire is fairly thin. It can go around once, it can go around twice, but once it's all put together, it is hardened, so it doesn't pull open.
Yes. It
Whereas
does.
not all, a lot of ordinary European maille was not hardened.
Yes.
But they considered the riveting was enough, and you know, riveted maille is very strong.
Yes.
But the Japanese approached it from. It's clearly they developed their own idea of how to make maille.
Yeah.
It's not. It's not like for instance, maille in Roman legionaries. I think they called maille armors lorica gallica because they came from the Gauls. Because as far as we know, that the Celtic tribes invented maille, and it spread all the way across into Iran, and from Iran into northern India, and into the steppe and everything like that. So maille was everywhere by the 12th, 13th century. But
And
that all that
examples
maille
of
came
mail we
from,
have from Sasanian Iran as well. Very old, right?
yeah. There's both examples of actual maille and there are beautiful sculptures
Yes.
showing maille. I mean, all of the early Sasanian rock reliefs about the overthrow of the Parthians, all of the maille is
Mail.
beautifully delineated. And there's no doubt you couldn't even in your wildest imagination think it was anything but maille.
Yes.
We had a discussion about this in one of the papers. Um, that we wrote together, uh, where my interpretation is that the Galatians in Anatolia, these are Gallic tribes that migrated into Anatolia in I think it was several centuries BCE, probably brought mail with them. And maybe when the Parthians expanded to there, mail started to move into Iran, and the Sasanians really went all out on high quality mail. I mean, the Parthians liked strips of steel bands, making arm guards and leg guards and that. And the Sasanians kept the leg guards, but the Sasanians really liked solid mail shirts. And by solid, I mean like in the sculptures, they always show the rings really big and thick,
Yes.
as though this is the thing they really liked.
Yes.
And which is, you know, uh, mail is very good in climates like Iran and modern day Iraq
Yeah.
and Anatolia, like modern day Turkey. It's a basically self cleaning, because when you're wearing it, all the rings rub against each other and brush the rust off. Of course, your clothes get very dirty, but that's
Yes.
wash your clothes easy. Um, it's You can pack it up into a little box
Yeah.
because it all collapse into a small thing. It's really good against cuts. And a lot of, unless it's a very well directed, powerful stab, it's pretty good against stabs too.
Yes.
Its main disadvantage is it really has no, I mean, it stops you from being cut. But if you're hit with a mace or something like that, it really lets the force transmit in.
Yeah.
And so that's its greatest weakness. But see, maces weren't, as common as
Yeah.
you might think. I
Yes.
think Professor Asaraf's article on Purusia. Oh no, he has a separate one on giant iron maces that the early Arabs used after the conquest. So I think it might have been the early Abbasid period. These were big iron maces, like big iron bars with handles, and he basically said and quoted from various original sources saying, people get hit by this and they're down. There's nothing they can do. Their armor won't stop it. The
I
problem
remember
was
in
there was
some
so much.
early version texts, really early,
Yeah,
they called those maces kafar kub, heathen basher, infidel
yeah.
basher.
Well, weirdly enough, the Japanese had a tradition of really the club-like maces of enormous weight that
Yes.
were basically somebody really strong who had practiced with them would go into a battle where there's a lot of infantry defending and just smash everybody in front of him and let the
Yes.
other guys in. I mean, it was very dangerous, but
Really.
undoubtedly it worked. I
Yes.
might point out too that the interested looking horse, the bridle is a typical Japanese bridle.
Mhm.
The bit is a looks it looks like a typical Japanese bit. Japanese bits were what are called in the West broken snaffles. So the mouthpiece is hinged in the middle and it has like rings that go through the ends of the bars, and then that's attached to the cheek pieces. Uh, in Japan, the straps of the bridle were nearly always woven from cloth rather than being made of leather, whereas the side parts of the saddle are lacquered leather. But there's a lot of fabric material used in horse gear.
Yeah.
Um, and you can see that horse is incredibly well dressed.
Yes. Very
Keep
well.
the flies away.
Yes, that's right. So we have also descriptions, of items here. So my student also some animations here. So, I mean,
Mhm.
Dana, my student who was in Berlin, she did this for us.
Yeah, it's interesting showing a man drawing a sword on his bow, but we won't even think about that.
Yes,
um,
exactly. I just want to make a comment on that. Yeah.
and the bow is symmetrical, which is not a Japanese thing at all. I'm looking at the other side. You've got some horse armor,
Yeah.
Japanese did have horse armor, but they didn't use it very often. There's a kura, which is a saddle on the right, black lacquered saddle. There is what appears to be the framework of a chamfron for a horse's head.
Yeah.
And right off on the other side
Mm.
is the bowl of a helmet, kabuto. And it looks like it's made of multiple plates with multiple rivets holding them together.
Here,
So
bead
all the
means
plates,
here.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. This is a classic Japanese way to make helmets. The helmets were quite heavy. I mean, those little bowls, I'm not talking about the shikoro on the sides, which are also heavy, but the helmets were quite heavy. They often had a hole in the top, so the plates didn't all meet and cover the thing. There's often a hole, called tehen, and in the very old days, um, when they wore what's called great armor or yoroi, uh, people, when they put on a helmet, plaited their hair up into a spike and put it through the hole. This is what they say. I don't think it's a very practical thing to do, but who knows what people did in the old days.
Yes.
Um, the helmets actually had a liner, so that later helmets they didn't do that. Later helmets, when you put your, say, in the Sengoku Jidai period, the Warring States period in Japanese history before the country was reunited, they would just wear their hair down and they would tie it back with a piece of cloth, and then they put the helmet on. The helmet had a leather lining inside that suspended the helmet above your head, so it's not directly touching. So the helmets were very effective, even though they were quite heavy. And when you think of the type of blows that would be directed against somebody's head, um, it's really important that you have a strong helmet.
Yes.
The neck guards, the shikoro, they were attached usually at five places around the head on the helmet, by lacing running through holes in the helmet. And if you look closely at the helmet bowls, you usually can see paired sets of holes, like here, here, and at the back where the shikoro is attached. Um, I think there are accounts of battles where somebody has been grabbed by the neck guard of their helmet
Yeah.
and those things tore out and he managed to get away and fight his enemy, or something like that. It wasn't meant to be ultimately immovable. It was,
Yes.
this give and take. In Japanese armor has a lot of areas of flexibility that we wouldn't normally think of,
Yes.
because we think in rigid terms in European armor. So,
Yes. That's right. And here we can see a better picture, possibly. Please take a look at that from the same item.
oh yeah, yeah. Well, that's the Japanese saddle. It's essentially just a saddle tree.
Yeah.
It's those. It's made of four pieces and they're laced together. So the two side bars and the pommel in the front and the cantle at the back,
Yeah.
and then it sits on a specially padded
Mm.
fixture, and it has slots to take the stirrup straps. There's a leather seat that goes over it with slots in it that takes the girth straps, which hold it in place. But it has long projections at the front and the back coming from the pommel and the cantle, which stabilize it
Yeah.
so it doesn't move when it's correctly positioned on the horse. You can see from that metal chamfron, it's like a skeleton chamfron. It may have been
Here.
sewn to a padded under part, or it may have been sewn inside
Yeah.
a cloth thing, which
Yeah.
it formed the protection, and the cloth thing was decorative. A lot of armor on horses was more decorative than it was functional, because the Japanese really tended to target the warrior,
Yeah.
not the horse.
Yeah.
Um, because you cut somebody's head off and you take it to your general and say, look, I've got Lord such and such's head, then this is good stuff. I mean, you do really well if you can turn up with somebody important's head. Um, and there's stories about armor in various Japanese books that written in the 1700s and earlier. talking about how somebody was trying to kill somebody and cut his head off, and the guy on the ground says, "Let me take my nadawa off." That's the throat protection we were talking about earlier. So you can cut my throat. And while they're talking about this, the guy on the ground, Squire, comes up and kills the other guy. And it was considered good manners if the guy was clearly winning. Oh, right, yeah. Look, that's how you can cut my head off. We don't want it all rag. So yeah, these stories have an element of gallows humor about them because this is what the real people were telling each other.
Yeah, exactly.
The armor on what I'm looking at towards my left is an Oyoroi armor. This is
Yes,
the early style.
yes,
Um, uh, it's all made with scales, but
yes,
the breastplate is covered in patterned leather, so it scales underneath, and
yeah,
the patterned leather is to protect the bowstring when you were shooting from the
yes,
heads of the scales.
yes.
Um, the again, that's the throat protection. There is a nodawa.
Mm,
There's another type of throat protection that's directly attached to the mask, the mempo, um, which has a different name. Um, I'm trying to remember. I think the name translates into English as dribble hang, like
mm.
a baby's bib to
Yeah,
catch the dribbles in it. The Japanese didn't go. They had wonderful names for things, but sometimes there was a bit of I don't know, pragmatism. It wasn't meant to be poetic all the time. Now you see that armor, the skirts are divided into four. There's a big piece in the front, there's two big pieces on the side, and though you can't see them, there's big pieces at the back.
yes,
Um, this type of armor, you it they say it was designed for horseback use because it's very heavy and it doesn't
yes,
have anywhere to sit on the hips, so all the weight's taken on the shoulders. But when bear in mind where the kusazori attached to the dough, the body of the armor, that would be on your physical waist,
yeah,
around where your navel is,
yeah,
quite high on the body. Um,
quite high.
but even so, getting on a horse wearing that armor, which has four openings at each corner, basically, the front part would sit almost flat over the pommel of the saddle,
Yeah,
and the back part would do the same over the cantle, and the two side parts would hang down over your legs. I don't think it'd be a very practical armor on horseback, but apparently the Japanese writers of the time said it was very cumbersome on foot as well.
mm,
But if you look at some of the paintings from the 1100s and 1200s that the Japanese did, there are people wearing this armor
yeah,
running full
yeah,
out.
yeah,
And they
yeah.
don't, I mean, it's quite common in paintings to show that. So they obviously thought you could do it. It's just that they thought it could be improved.
They have very stretched legs in those paintings when they run, right?
Yeah, yeah. It always looks like they're at full tilt, like they're just finished running a sprint or something. Um,
Exactly.
you also see in that close up of the face and the helmet, you can see the mempo. You can see the areas where it can be taken apart. So you can take the nose off. Sometimes you can take that part off there as well to
Mhm,
give you just protection around the jaw.
mhm.
The steel on this is I've actually worn a real one, weirdly enough. Uh, the steel is quite thin, like a millimeter or so thick, and it's very closely formed to the face. Even if your jawline's a bit different and everything, it just sits in really smoothly. And it forms the base for tying the cord that holds the helmet on as well. So that pushes it in against the face. It's not uncomfortable. It's very smooth on the inside. Um, I don't know what it'd be like to be hit while you were wearing one, uh, because in a sense, it would spread out some of the strikes, but in another sense, not so much. Um, Now, the other thing it's important to note it has a false moustache. This is really common on Mempo. They liked their face armor to have a moustache,
Yes.
and it was usually bristles. I mean, it wasn't like just carved in. like the Persian
Yes.
visors that they have kind of stylized mustaches carved in, but the Japanese, no, we want to have real hair there because
Yes,
it looks.
exactly.
And some of them are like walrus mustaches, and some of them are small like this. It's really quite amazing. A
Amazing.
good thing about that photograph too is it shows the inside of the armor. You can see the
Yeah.
inside of the scales and that. Um, Everything in this type of armor is laced with silk cords.
Yes.
So they wove a special type of flat cord out of very strong silk for these. I mean, you see all these tiny little holes and all these cords through them.
Yes.
Um, you have to cut an awful lot of those cords before the armor starts to fall apart. So it looks like it's delicate and be really easy to damage. Well, it is easy to damage, but it's very hard to get through.
Yeah.
Um, that's a particularly big Nadala, or I can't really tell if it's attached directly to the mempo. It does look as though it is, so it could be um, the other kind of neck guard.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but when you see this armor is gilded, so what they did was they laced a row of scales together. Now, before the scales were laced together, they were painted with lacquer so that they were waterproof. Then they laced them together. Uh, so they've got a whole row in the shape they want it to do. Then they would get often dog skin and they would glue it over the bottom rows of lacings, the ones that hold it together side to side. And
Mhm.
then they would lacquer over that again. So the whole thing was actually quite rigid and it was totally waterproof. Then they would lace one row to the next row to the next row.
Mm.
And the way they did it is, um, as a person who's laced armors together, is really both really brilliant and really difficult. Each scale had 13 holes in it, in one row of six
Mm.
and one row of seven, just down the sides of the scale. The
Mm.
bottom eight holes,
Mhm.
so four on each side of the scale, were
Yeah.
for holding the rows together. The next row of holes above that, which is two on each scale, but they completely overlap so that the hole on the next scale was underneath the hole on the
Mhm.
following scale. That was for the lace that went down to the next row.
Mhm.
And then the two holes at the top on one side and one on the other were for this zigzag lacing, which comes out the back of the front scale and
Mhm.
goes up between the two scales to form that flat ribbon that goes up to the next row. Um, it's except for some of the scales on the Shikoro that had 14 holes, this was the standard way that they made Japanese armor. And I must admit, I read a book written in the, translated to English, I might add, written in the 1700s about armor, and I totally mistook that. I thought they all had 14 holes, but he didn't actually say that. The only illustration had 14 holes, and it was from a scale from the neck guard, not from the body of the armor.
Mhm.
And it was later on I found out that they nearly all had 13 holes. And so the scales would overlap, and the back scale on the top holes would be missing a hole, so that when you push the lace through, it hit the back scale and had to go straight up. And that's how they could keep the lacing so flat, which is, from a practical point of view, unnecessary, but from the point of view of making the armor look beautiful, it's really important. And the Japanese, once they developed this, they never changed it because it looks so good. And
Yes.
anyone that's seen Japanese armor up close knows it looks really good. You can really see the craftsmanship.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, there are also more descriptions as well. I mean, also quizzes. We move to the next one, and okay, we saw this side beat, just
Mhm.
this side, and also this armor. Let's hope that I have put enough from the other side. Yeah, here you go.
Okay, so it looks like the armor on the left, my left,
Mm-hmm.
it's right. looks like a either haramakido, which is an armor that is open at the back,
Yeah.
and you put it on like this, and someone does it up the back for you. And often it has a separate plate down the middle of the back. It could be just a standard dough,
Yes.
which um, folds round, so it's open on the right side under the arm,
Yes.
and usually there's a separate plate, I think called waka ita,
Mhm.
which where the two things come close together, that covers that join. And
Mhm.
um, the early armors were made like that. Later on, they just completely folded round and attached together. I think the concept of the waka ita was um, that because it wasn't made of lots of scales, it was a solid plate that it just protected that right side of the body there.
Yeah.
That Japanese didn't use shields very much. They did use pavis like shields in certainly in the later part of the Sengoku Jidai.
Yes.
Um, but in general, shields weren't a big thing. So therefore, the armor had to be pretty protective, and that's why they opened on that side, like on the right side, rather than the left side. So ancient Greek armor opened on the left side because your shield was there, so your armor didn't have to be as strong on the left side. So if you're advancing with a spear, a Japanese warrior advancing with a spear, his left side is facing the enemy, and therefore it has to be strongly armored. Now you'll notice there's a number of things in that photograph. Uh, on the bottom right hand side, you can see like a donut shaped piece of woven
Let me show
material.
it, please. Here.
Yeah, this is
Yes.
what's called soramaki. I think that's the correct term.
Yes.
I'm working on memory at the moment. It's been a couple
No,
of years
that's
since I've
okay.
read this. And that is something you wore off your belt on your sword side, so the left side, and it contained spare bowstrings. So
Yes.
it was like a donut that you could open up, and inside you had a bowstring and you could
Yes.
fasten it up. They're often highly decorative and really important
Mhm.
to be good, but sometimes they're just made of very fine woven bamboo strips.
Mhm.
Not too sure of the other two things there. The one looks like a box for the second one.
Yes.
In the middle, in the front, that is armor for the forehead and the cheeks.
This
And
one.
sometimes that is
This
worn with
one.
a helmet, and other times it's worn just by itself.
Yes.
And it just gives you basic protection from sword cuts to the
You
face.
see also
Uh,
many peasant soldiers wear that. Have you seen in
yeah,
Japanese
yeah,
movies?
because uh, the availability of armor was decided by what you could afford or what your lord could afford.
Yeah.
So if you go to the armory and they issue a series of weapons to you, that is dependent on how much money your lord has to spend on it.
Yeah.
If you've got a little bit of money, you might buy a bit of extra equipment to protect yourself. Um, but this, if you're just out and about doing a bit of pillaging or whatever, maybe you don't want to wear your whole helmet and everything like that, so you can tie one of those on. But if you're a poorer person, this is maybe all you can afford. But when you look at it, it's beautifully shaped.
Yes.
It's not just a simple thing that, just hammered out by an ordinary blacksmith. An armorer has to make this.
Yes.
At the back is the carrying setup for a bow or two bows and a closed quiver or yarutsu.
Yes.
Um, it's a frame which has places to put the bows and to tie the quiver in. I've seen real ones of these up close. They're made of lacquered wood usually, and they have gilding and they're beautifully decorated. Um, but you can see like a fork piece on the bottom that's to fit into some kind of. These were carried like in procession.
Yeah.
When one of the great lords, when the Tokugawa established the last shogunate, the Tokugawa shogunate, in order to control the feudal lords, they mandated that each lord had to spend, or his family had to spend 6 months in Edo, which is now Tokyo, the capital. And that was to stop them from conspiring together and revolting. And so every year there'd be two big processions. Each daimyo, this is Great Lord, would have to have going to Edo with his family and coming back. And they carried this equipment. They had retainers walking along behind them, carrying all this kind of stuff, and they'd be carrying special swords, and they'd be all this would be carried. So there was these are kind of like a mobile display case for high quality archery equipment. And you could still buy them into the 1920s because an Australian doctor who was interested in archery went to some of the Japanese archery shops in the 1920s and bought both the quivers and the frames and the bows and everything. You could just go in and buy them because they
Old
were,
ones?
yeah, because they had stock. Like the archery shops were still selling new bows, but they had stock of this stuff which was not used anymore, and it was beautifully made, inlaid with mother of pearl. Incredibly artistic. And he bought two, I know, because they ended up in the Australian Museum. I think the stand is still with his family, but they were thinking about giving it to the museum to complete the ensemble. But just the thought, this wasn't just a comfortable way of carrying weapons around. This was our way of displaying uh, how wealthy and important you were. And in fact, the Tokugawa shogunate encouraged this kind of display, encouraged people having elaborate um, and decorated armors made because it distracted them from actually planning real rebellions. And they used up a lot of money, and that was one of the things. Is to one way to stop um, people having enough resources to revolt is to encourage them to spend money on things that aren't necessary. I mean, the classic story, which I don't know if it's true, about the Thai kings when they wanted to ruin one of their vassals who was getting a little bit too rebellious, is they give him a white elephant. And the white elephant costs so much to look after that he'd have to spend all his money looking after the elephant, and he couldn't spend it on weapons. It's a lovely story. I don't know if it's true, but it's certainly lovely. So what we have on the other side,
Mhm.
oh, I'm not really quite sure. Uh, I really I can recognise a large two-bladed pole weapon of some sort on the extreme left. Then an axe. I'm not sure what the next group of things are. Then it looks like a statue holding something, so it might be a stand for something. And then a lion dog in gilded bronze. It looks like.
Yeah.
Um, but all these things. Is that? It's not. Is it a gun
I
on the
don't
left?
I don't know what it is, to be honest.
No, I don't either. Oh well,
Let me see if
maybe I'll
I
have to
can.
go to this museum.
No, I don't have a better picture of that. But
Oh,
let's move on to
oh.
this one.
So these are temple swords.
Yes.
So when the sword entered Japan, the ones that came from China came in two forms. Uh, and this is very early, like this is fourth, fifth century. Um, one form was double-edged and straight-bladed, and the other form was single-edged and largely straight-bladed. There's another type of sword that came in with a large bulbous grip, which was single-edged. Um, and But they kept making these ceremonial swords
Yes.
mainly for temples. You see the one on the right has like the Vajra Dorje type
Yes.
symbol on the pommel.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, the
Actually,
blade
yeah.
itself
Yeah.
uh, looks almost like a long double-edged spear blade. Uh, so that they become so stylized that they were more things in temples when priests were doing rituals and stuff like that. The helmet in the center,
Mm.
that's not necessarily purely ceremonial. That kind of elaborate crest was worn on helmets into battle.
Yes.
It looks like it's red lacquered steel, and it looks like it's what's a three-plate helmet. So it has a plate that goes over the middle and two side plates.
Yeah. You know,
The
when I
part covering the
saw
breast.
that, when I saw that, then I just said,
Yeah.
okay, make sure you do not make a dedicated man cut to the top of the hat because
Yeah. Well, maybe the helmet itself is really strong. I know this type of helmet was very popular towards
no,
the
I
end of
mean
this year.
it will get trapped in this helmet and you
Oh
can
no, 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 that stuff is probably papier-mâché covered in lacquer. So that you just cut straight through that. But the thing is, it would distract you
exactly. That's
into
what I
heading in
mean.
that direction. That
Yeah.
wouldn't be if it was made out of metal. The metal would be like half a millimeter thick and then covered in lacquer. So it's not. It's much more substantial looking than it really is.
Yeah.
Uh, but the helmet itself is a very, very strong design, and
Very strong.
that they were originally made for poor soldiers because they could make them out of three plates. They're really four plates. There's a
Yes.
brow plate. There's a bit that goes around, but they became very popular. I think around the time of Hideyoshi,
Yeah.
and I think people like Kaito Kiyomasa um, popularized them with wealthy people because you could do all kinds of things. You could put really crazy crests, and if somebody came at you with a naginata and whacked you on the head with it, trying to chop through your crest or whatever, the helmet would protect your head. They're really substantial.
Yes.
You notice also the incredibly decorative scabbards for the
Yes.
blades.
Magnificent. I was just thinking about the scabbards. Yes.
I mean, it's just amazing. And
Amazing.
and again with the Buddha statues, either side, one standing, one seated. The Japanese, the level of sculpture that they used in Buddhist statuary is amazing. I mean, you can trace some of the ideas back to Song Dynasty China and other places where Buddhist statues were highly advanced, but the Japanese had their own style, and of course they built giant ones.
Yeah.
Um,
Yes.
so that sometimes they were works of art, and sometimes they were just works of incredibly complex metalwork.
Yes.
Because the really big ones were made out of bronze. Here we have a later armor that looks like the Tokugawa Mon on the flag.
Yeah.
Um, this armor, if you can see, is made of solid rows laced together. So
Yeah.
instead of being lots of little scales laced together, it's solid rows laced together.
Yeah.
This was a development that started towards the end of the Warring States period when Japan became unified. Because first of all, it's easier to making lots of little scales. The scales had got smaller, and the holes got bigger, so that eventually the scales became impractical. In fact, one of the early writers said the problem with all this lacing was when you were fighting in the rain, it got wet, and then insects started living in there, and it was a real terrible thing. So
Yeah.
what they started to do was reduce the lacing. Now, it's interesting because if you look at paintings from Iran from the Ilkhanate period, you see what this is sparse lacing, where there's not a lot of laces in each row. You see this already in Mongol and Iranian stuff, so it's not unusual.
Yeah.
Um, you can see the sode in this better. You can see up here on the arm, like it's an open work pattern. There are little empty squares
Yes.
because that was to give the arm flexibility. Um, you can see the kusazuri are what, one, two, three, four plate kusazuri. Four or five is quite common.
Yes.
Um, the you can this armor has got hidate, so that skirt underneath the bottom of the armor that was tied around your waist. It
Yes.
was leather on the upper parts so that the kusazuri wouldn't catch on it, and it was a whole different style of scale on the lower parts, which is something like Western scale armor in the sense, by Western I mean Roman actually,
Yeah.
where the scales are attached together side to side and then sewn to a backing. That's essentially what that is. Whereas the upper part of the armor is based on lamellar armor, even though it's solid rows now. You can see also the kote much better. The kote are, you can see the hand has got molded, the metal is molded to show the knuckles. It's actually got a single plate that folds over the fingers. It's got a separate plate for the thumb. And then you've got strips of steel with maille between them, covering the forearms. Then you've got the more articulated maille higher up, and there are other pieces of solid plate further up. This armor has got um, sode, the shoulder guards. They're
Yeah.
much smaller than the old ones,
Yes.
and eventually they were left off armor altogether because they weren't serving a function anymore. Uh, this type of armor, you could see it comes in at the waist,
Yeah.
so it distributed the weight of the armor much better.
Yes.
It was much more comfortable to wear. It could be made. It could actually be made in 5 plates. So
Okay.
one plate in the front, one plate in the back, and by which I mean that's a group of those strips. Um, one on the left side and two smaller ones on the right side where it does up. So the whole thing would fold out into a shape, something like that.
Yes.
It gave space for the chest to expand. These were considered much more comfortable than the early armors,
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely.
and generally made of lacquered steel. So you'd have steel strips with holes in them for the lacing, and the whole thing would be lacquered, which made it waterproof. And then the lacquer could be coloured any colour that you wanted to colour the lacquer. This case, it's black, but sometimes it would be bright red
Mhm.
or anything they wanted to do.
And very interesting purple color, right? Very interesting.
Yeah, yeah. This is whether it was a darker purple when it was made and it's faded over the years, or it was meant that color. Japanese had like the Turks and the Persians had a liking for strong colors, had a
Yeah.
liking for strong patterns,
Yes.
and you can see this. The crest at the back, the Tokugawa family, um,
Mhm.
were in their own genealogies related back to the Minamoto family who founded the first shogunate. Um, the Tokugawa under the first Tokugawa shogun Ieyasu won the final series of civil wars in Japan.
Yes.
So Japan was united, or the main part of the unity of Japan was by a warlord called Oda Nobunaga.
Yeah.
And when he was assassinated by a daimyo called Akechi, I think, one of his generals took over Hideyoshi, and he completed the unification of Japan and invaded Korea as well, which caused all kinds of problems for everybody.
Yeah.
Uh, when he died, there was a fight. He left Tokugawa Ieyasu and several other major figures as guardians for his son, and then a series of civil wars erupted between the Hideyoshi family and essentially Tokugawa Ieyasu.
Yes.
He eventually won, and that he created the Tokugawa shogunate that ruled until the Meiji Restoration. Um,
Yes. Yes.
this is good. This is good. This is really
More
interesting.
armor.
Yeah,
I'm really happy
uh,
that the museum have different sets of armor, not only swords and edged weapons, you know?
yeah, and these are from different periods as well, and show
Yes.
different styles.
Yes.
So I mean, you can see the we just looking at you can see how the kuzuzuri hang is quite interesting.
Yes.
You've also got two different forms of helmet bowl in the two helmets there. The one with the big wings on the helmet, that's again decoration. That's not part of the defense. That you could cut through that with a sword without even slowing down. But the bowl of the helmet,
Yeah.
uh, in one case, it's made of lots of little strips with lots of rivets. In the other case, it's probably strips and riveted, but everything's been lacquered over so it looks all smooth and you can't tell where the plates are. This is quite common. The box that the armor is standing on
Mhm.
is classically the type of box that the armor was transported in.
Yeah.
So a samurai would have a box and a servant, and the box would be worn like a backpack by the servant who would take it wherever, set it down, open it up, and then dress the samurai in his armor. Um, it's you didn't want to be the servant, but the boxes are beautiful.
Yeah.
I think they're called tanto.
Yeah.
Uh, my memory is occasionally dredging up things. Again, you see this armor has those pieces on the sides of the breast that cover where the toggles are.
Yes.
Um, as I think, yeah, again the one on the left side where the bowstring is passing is much reduced. The one on the right side has lots of little rows and it's more flexible so that when you're drawing the bow, you can raise your arm and it sits to protect you. Again, you notice that the kuzazuri, there's a big gap between the bottom of the do or the cuirass and the kuzazuri, and a sash went round there, and they didn't think it was necessary to armor that very highly. There are some armors where there are kind of plates sewn into cloth covering that area. But generally speaking, there was a really thick sash around there, which was padded to help support the armor. And maybe it was just so difficult to cut across the hips there that it was all that was necessary. Um, but the Kuzazuri, obviously, they moved in and out as you moved, and gaps would appear. But they were very good at preventing strikes, cutting strikes across the upper part of the thigh, which is if you get cut, particularly on the inner part of the thigh,
Oh
that
God.
could be life ending because
Yeah.
it takes out the femoral artery. So
Yes.
protecting the thighs is important. If you got cut on the outside of the thigh, it may stop you from being able to move
Yeah.
because the muscles there stop working because they're cut. So you can immobilize somebody. So it's important to protect the thighs.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely. Okay. And now we have a closer look. We have a closer look
yeah.
to these two helmets here.
On the one on the right, which is just the helmet bowl with
Yes.
the literally see helmets were described by how many plates it took to make up a helmet. So a helmet could have 32 plates,
Yeah.
which is quite a large number, but that one's probably a 64 plate helmet. Um, and you notice each plate has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 12, 14 rivets.
Yes.
And
So
even
beautiful.
this kind of brow guard,
Yeah.
like a kind of visor,
Yeah.
notice it's got engraved eyebrows on it.
Yes, I saw that. Yeah. Let me show
Uh,
our
uh,
viewers. Look, guys,
yeah,
he means this one.
yeah. Because there's always this kind of like animism, like the plates are meant to look or have an appearance. The helmet next to it, which has a small neck guard. So the Shikoro in this period, which is either Edo period or just 100 years earlier or so.
Yeah.
So in the 1600s, something like that.
Yeah.
Um, they started to make them smaller because people were fighting on foot. Bows were still used in battle, but when um, matchlock muskets were introduced by European sailors, and the Japanese adopted them very quickly, um, then the carrying those big defenses for your neck just wasn't worth it because if they shot you with a gun, it would go through it anyway.
Yeah.
So they got smaller, but they were still useful if you were fighting with swords and spears. And so they got smaller so you could move your head more easily. And of course, it reduced the weight of the helmet. Again, you can see this brow band is shaped coming up like this.
Look
And
at the top
it's
bead.
that all of these tops had specific meanings. Um, the decorative things could be the helmet could be completely covered in a lacquer imitation of a hat.
Yeah.
Uh, in this case, I'm wondering whether you'd have to look at it. There are books just on Japanese helmets, even in English,
I have
because
some bead.
yeah, and they describe each of these things had a meaning, and it might have some kind of Buddhist thing. I mean, it looks a little bit like bat wings, but Not
It seems
really.
to have a certain function to work as, if it keeps raining, so you can use it as an umbrella.
I don't know. If there was a strong wind, your head might keep turning around. But it was to make the person stand out. And as I say, this is usually done just with lacquered
Yeah,
uh, wood and paper. It's not that part of the helmet
yeah,
is not defensive. It's purely to make the wearer of that helmet stand out in a group,
yes,
so that people know this is somebody important. Let's go and kill him.
yeah.
Uh, if you look on the other side, the I love the hairy armor. It's incredible. The one on the right. Now he's got a little beard as well, but the shoulder guards and the chest are all got added hair. I
Yes,
don't know whether he's
this one you mean, right, Pete? This one.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I mean,
exactly.
there's something us people, these people, like these high ranking domos and that, um, they they were essentially really trying to make themselves targets because they were showing off how brave they were and how
Yes,
how rich they were. But you see these things and you've got to wonder. On the left, on the other hand, there's a solid breastplate that's based on the Japanese interpretation of European breastplates.
yeah, this one.
Uh, yeah,
This one. Hmm.
because after the introduction of guns, the Japanese rapidly realized that solid breastplates were better
Yeah,
than ones made of scale or even rows of solid bands.
yeah,
And they they rapidly adapted. Though I must admit, I think the Japanese solid plate breastplates were a better design than the European ones if you wanted to be moving around a lot.
well,
If you were fighting in a fairly rigid way, the European ones were they gave you more protection. Yeah. Pardon me, but they reduced your mobility. Again, that armor sat on its box. So each armor had its special box so it could be
yes,
stored and transported.
yeah,
And usually the boxes were decorative so that in the room where the lord of the area was sitting, holding court with his retainers, there might be a historic armor mounted on a stand sitting on a box to
yes,
one side of him to show his lineage, the fact that he was a descendant of this great warrior in the past, and it's all building up the importance of the family and the individual.
yeah,
But again, it's decoration is
yes.
uh, splendid, and of course it's been adapted for Japanese usage. Well, this is interesting to me because I see a whole pile of arrowheads. Uh, but speaking of the armor first, on the right, that strip of lamellar armor with the little ring in it
Yeah,
is almost certainly the piece that fits down the back of
yes,
an armor that opens at the back.
yes. Here,
And
yeah,
the little ring is used to tie onto the little rings on the sode to stop them from going forward and getting in the way. And
this,
of course, next to it is a nodawa for protecting the throat.
yeah, yeah,
Um, and of course, we've got displays of suba,
yeah,
sword guards, the
yes.
discs.
Here,
Below is the scabbard. It looks like the scabbard of a tanto at the bottom.
yes,
And that could be an early form or an archaic form of a wakizashi above it.
yes,
I don't know where the sword is for that because that tanto, essentially the Japanese had two ways of wearing their long swords.
yes,
If you wore it edge down, hanging from a belt,
yeah,
um, the sword is called a tanto. It's usually meant more for one-handed use. It has a long handle, but it's a cavalry sword.
You mean
When
katana, wakizashi, and tanto. Katana is the long, wakizashi medium, and tanto the
No, no,
short.
there's two long swords. Katana is
And
the
tachi,
shorter of
you
the
mean
two.
tachi, tachi.
Tachi, yeah.
You
So
know,
that's a
tachi.
tachi scabbard because you can see the suspension rings.
Yes. No, because
So
I
it's
just
meant
wanted
to
to
be
make
worn.
it clear, Pete. This you mean
Yeah,
tachi
yeah,
then, right? Hmm.
yeah. So the sword that samurais or bushi in general wore in the earlier period was hung from the belt. the sword that they wore in the later period was stuck into the belt.
Yes.
And so one was worn with the edge down and you drew up like that. And
Yes.
one was drawn with the edge up and you drew out like
Yes.
that.
Yes.
And the earlier one, touchies, I've only handled one touchy in my life, and it was 16th century, I think, and it had its old original scabbard and mounts, and unlike a katana, it's perfectly balanced for one-handed use because the
Yes.
other hand is holding the reins of your horse because it's a cavalry sword. Whereas the katana is really designed for two-handed use. So you can use it one-handed, but it's not as effective as the two-handed style that is the predominant style for using katanas. So the two swords are quite different. And also earlier touchies, the tang, instead of following the general curve of the sword, can be bent down backwards so that when you're holding it, the blade is, they're quite strange. Early touchies are very, not all of them, but some of them are quite strange. Um, but yeah, that's definitely in the style of a tachi scabbard. As I say, the other one, the standard short sword, wakizashi, uh, usually had a small tsuba and it looked like a half-size version of not necessarily half-size, but generally smaller version of a katana. The tanto usually didn't have a prominent guard
Yeah.
and it was technically a dagger. Um, So in the old days, when you wore a tachi, you would have your tanto almost vertical in your belt and your tachi hanging almost horizontally.
Yes.
Then when they went to using katanas, the katana would be stuck in the belt that way, and the wakizashi would be stuck in
Yes. And if we come to
across.
katana, wakizashi, and tanto, just something from Japanese swordsmanship schools, they always say we carry three swords. So they never say tanto is a dagger, as you know. Everything is a
Well,
sword.
technically, it's not a dagger in the sense of a double-edged dagger. It is
Yeah.
a
Yes.
single-edged weapon,
Yes.
and the word for single edge is the same for a knife as it is for a sword.
Yes.
It
Yes.
doesn't change. Now, getting to the interesting part, the arrowheads. There's some very nice arrowheads there. Um, Lots of different shapes used in Japan and lots of decorative shapes because it wasn't uncommon to give pairs of arrows to temples as dedication so that the gods would look on you favorably. So there's a lot of really beautiful arrowheads. Um, Most of the ones I've got aren't decorative. I've got quite a few armor piercing arrowheads, but the these ones, the kind of broadheads and the ones that are kind of have like curved cross blades coming facing forwards and that, uh, and the ones that are like a broadhead with piercings. It wasn't uncommon to have something like a flower or something
Yeah.
pierced into the broadhead. And these, the ones that were decorated like that, were you might only have one or two of those in your quiver, and
Yes.
they were for shooting important people. So again, what I said earlier, if you got shot with a normal arrow, it was an accident. If you got shot with one of these fancy broadheads or whatever, it was deliberate. So therefore, you were killed by somebody trying to kill you. Um, I'm not sure it made any difference when you were dead, but it certainly made difference to the people that were still alive. Um,
Yeah.
the Suba, you notice they have three holes, one for the tang of the blade, and they're often things like small knives and other tools that fitted into the top of the scabbard.
Yes.
And they didn't go through those holes, but they kind of were aligned with them. The holes possibly originally were for lightening the sword, but they became so stylized that it's hard to tell.
Yes.
Suba are usually quite solid,
Yes. Very.
so that even though they're quite small, they would, even in the ones that are made out of bronze and other types of alloys like that, they still would stop a blade.
Absolutely. They will.
Um,
They will.
so it's important to recognize they weren't just decorative. Oh, we got some wild helmets here. Oh,
The helmet in the middle is magnificent.
you can imagine this guy coming over the top of the hill with an army behind him. You'd be really worried. And of course, these moved. They were kind of flexible metal. The big ones were. So they would flash in the sun. I mean, this would be so spectacular. Um, the There is a famous helmet that's giant rabbit ears. Uh, so there was a kind, as I say, these they're very stylized, and I'm sure that the people at the time took them very seriously. But they have a certain, I don't know, fun look about them. Like there was a sense of humor. These guys are quite prepared to die on the battlefield. They're not, so therefore, nobody's going to say, "Oh, look how silly he looks." Of course, he'll cut your head off. Uh,
Oh God. Yeah.
Maybe they were just saying, "Look, come and fight me. I'm over here. I'm really tough." It's the kind of exact opposite of camouflage. Camouflage, you're trying to hide from your enemy. Wearing a helmet like this, you're trying to say, "Look at me. If you think you're really good, come and try and fight me." Of course, you had to fight your way through all these retainers to get to him, so that made it a bit difficult. The armor on the right, in this case, with its magnificent moustache on its mempo, is this later style with the solid breastplates. They're hinged, like there will be one, two, three, four hinges. And they are shaped to come into the waist, and you wore a padded sash under them to so that the armor sat on your waist and didn't drag your shoulders down all the time. You can see they're much. I mean, because they've got solid plates, they can be embossed or they can be covered in carved lacquer or whatever to make them look pretty. But they're much more utilitarian in basic design. Kuzazuri normally more. So the original armors way back in the early period only had four kuzazuri. Then you see five. Then you see seven. Is not unknown, I suppose, because they're basically to intercept the slash. And the more they can flex and move, the more energy they take up when the sword blow or a I don't know how good they are against Naginata. You really have to have someone test that. But big pole arms as well. This kind of flap and fold kind of design, and it also meant moving around was easy. You made a lot of noise because even though lacquered steel plates like this, or lacquered leather plates, which is the type of armor I got to wear, um, they sound more like plastic than metal because the lacquer is built up in, you know, 12, 15 layers. So they have the strength of steel, but the edges and that don't jab into you. They're much more comfortable to wear. The added weight from the lacquer isn't significant, as far as I can tell. But they're very interesting armors to wear. Um, the one I tried on was actually a solid breastplate, but it was made of strips of lacquered leather that were fitted together and then the whole thing lacquered into a plate. But when you put it on, it sat really comfortably. Um, and the chest there was room in your chest to breathe very easily. And because the weight wasn't sitting right on your shoulders, you just felt you had more ease of movement. I am not quite sure what the shin guards, the shineate, are easily identifiable. I'm not quite. I assume that the big black plates at the bottom are Haidate,
Yeah.
but he's got a pair of Haidate that are hanging directly below the Kuzazuri. You can see the decorative leather on the top and the metal scales on the bottom. So were they some form of shoulder guard
I
that
think
they've
so.
detached? And
Yeah.
because it was quite